This is TWiT.
Apple is selling a steady stream of iPhones to everyone in the world, even our kids, but at what cost to them? A few weeks ago, Georgia and I discussed social media addiction in teens, inspired by the piece we read by author, speaker, and professor Lisa Beyer. Lisa just posted another thoughtful article called 7 Surefire Ways Your Teen Won't Get Into College Thanks to Social Media, and she's here to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Hi, thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me.
So first, are colleges really looking through kids' social media profiles?
Well, according to a survey, at least 35% of the college admissions offices are looking at social media. To what degree? I think it just depends on the college, but I think it's becoming more and more increasing, becoming aware of what they're putting out there, especially with the article that came out about the Harvard admissions, basically taking away the admissions of 10 potential students earlier this year.
So yeah, the Harvard rescinded a bunch of students because they were posting racist memes and just inappropriate stuff in a what they thought was a private chat, but it was actually a private Facebook Messenger group, which was run by, I guess they all met at the Harvard group, and then they launched off to their own private group. So I guess my question for you, is there any place that is actually private?
I would say no. And I mean, even before, social media has exploded the way it has. I mean, I come from a traditional public relations background, and I always tell my clients, really there's no such thing as private. If you send something that you think is a private email, a private text message, if you're talking on, a private conversation, you just never know. Things can be recorded, screenshot, forwarded. I wouldn't trust anything today, really.
I mean, it's hard to expect. Megan and I were talking about this prior to the show. I have two daughters, 7 and 4, so I'm a little ways away, but slightly fearful of how I steer them in the right direction. And it's hard to think of, at least when they grow up to their teen years, that you can say also social media is bad. Don't do it. Don't post, because everything is not off limits to admissions. But there have to be some networks that are better than others because they're going to do it anyways. Are there any social media networks that more than others caused problems for students trying to get into schools?
Well, I think that we've seen with Snapchat, we've seen with Facebook, the larger networks where it's easy to access and see things. For example, Facebook, or things can get, let's say you're on a private group on Facebook and somebody can still screenshot it and then share it publicly on let's say an Instagram account. So things can start private, but then they end up going public. Mm-hmm. So it's a balancing act. I mean, for your kids, there's parental controls on the computer and on the devices, so you can start with that, and then eventually, as they mature, give them a little bit more freedom. But it's a total balancing act. And I mean, I can just look back 2 years ago. My daughter was 13. I felt very comfortable. I teach social media management at University of Florida. I felt like I was on top of it. But when you read see if I have the book here. When you read the book by Nancy Jo Sales, Secret Lives of American Teenagers on social media, I was completely shocked at really what's out there. So as a parent, you just have to completely educate yourself and guide your kids through high school.
Yeah, I read that book too. And I didn't read it all the way through when it first came out because it terrified me too much, but I've since gone back.
I was the same way. I think she starts out, chapter 1 starts 12 years old, and then it goes 13 is the next chapter, and 14-year-olds is the next chapter. So at the time my daughter was 12, I read 12, 13, 14, and then my oldest daughter was 19, and I read that chapter. I was like, oh no. So it's definitely something that every parent should read as just a way to prepare themselves with social media.
Mm-hmm. So I know that, every media network likes to talk about sexting, blah, blah, blah. But there's something I think that is more pervasive is just the sultry poses. So there's a lot, that's what kids starting so young, are just somehow trained just by all of this social media to, girls mostly, just to, stick their tongue out, or the duck face, or just these poses that they see everywhere. Could that be something that a college would look at and maybe judge a girl because of it? Because that seems like a little bit sexist, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think it just depends. I mean, if you're striving for a leadership role in high school and you're striving to get scholarships and you're striving, to really be known for, a certain thing, and that's what you're putting out on social media, it's going to send a mixed message. So you have to really look at it like it's a personal branding type of play. And personal branding now is starting, sad to say, in middle school and high school, because you're already building your brand at that age by building your public profile. And if you do a search on Google, if you do a search on social media, and these are the types of images that are coming up, is that how you want to be portrayed? I mean, some people might not care. Some people, if they're, going to be in theater, that might be something that, they're going to be more dramatic or more provocative. So I think it really just depends on who you want to be and who you want to be known as. And that's where, again, parents need to guide their kids on, how they're going to represent themselves.
Is there any sort of conversation or movement at this point that maybe I'm unaware of parents or people involved in the educational system recognizing that the internet, like kids are connected to the internet at a very young age and younger with every year. So and their schooling is guaranteed to be based around it at this point. You're at a disadvantage if you're not on the internet. Some sort of kind of class around how, I mean, you say building your brand, which is kind of ridiculous when I think about that. Like you're
Right.
a junior high student and you're building your brand. But I mean, that's going to happen anyways. It's just it's just how it is. Is there any conversation around having this be part of the curriculum, how you teach kids to be safe on the internet in that regard?
I mean, I see it in my community. It's starting. I mean, it's definitely, the awareness is growing, but I don't think it's to the point where it's going to get to a point where I would say social media education should be right up there with sex education, because really what's happening is it's happening on social media before it's actually happening in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And that's the sad part. So it's really has to be, between the counselors, the guiding counselors, it has to be the community, it has to be the parents all coming together. I don't think that movement is there yet, but I think that it's brewing. It takes a ton of resources to monitor, and imagine being a guidance counselor in middle school. They had their hands full before social media. Now throw in social media and it's almost like another full-time job for somebody.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, yeah, I mean, I can feel some people like Jason sort of cringing at the idea that a kid needs a brand. But, I mean, the earlier you teach them that social media is not real life, the better, because it is. I mean, no one is exactly who they are when they're on social media. That is just a fact. We're not like pretending to be exactly someone that we're not, but we're not who we really are inside when we're on social media.
Mm.
Exactly. And how we act in real life is completely different. And to have, like Georgia was talking about it in the interview, the facial expressions, the eye-to-eye communication, that is being lost with the screen to screen. And so, what I see happening, hopefully, is that we're going to get to this breaking point where all of a sudden low tech is going to be the in thing versus everything being so digital.
I completely agree with that. How do we help our children be responsible with social media without pushing them away from plain view and into the darkness, so to speak, or the kind of the parts that are hard to see on its surface, but still have the potential of being damaging?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that. I think that it's still being figured out. Just a couple of the things that I mentioned in the first article was that giving them boundaries, just like you would have a curfew and you have to be in at a certain time or go to bed at a certain time. So I see, a lot of parents don't even realize their kids are on social media basically all night long. And the later you're on it, the more trouble you're going to get into, just like the later you're out on the street or the later you're out at a bar type of thing. So setting boundaries, and there's apps now that you can help your kids, give them the limitations. But I think the most important thing for me right now, if I had to do it over 2 or 3 years ago, I would start the boundaries earlier, because it just kind of happens overnight where they go from being kind of innocent, and then all of a sudden into an environment that becomes much less innocent. And I think it's the transition from middle school to high school, where middle school, it's a very, they're with 6th to 8th graders. And then all of a sudden they jump to high school, and then, they're in the same school as seniors who are basically almost adults.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's a game-changing moment.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I think technology really hasn't changed. I mean, in terms of like, how do you keep your kids? I mean, we all experience the thing. If your parents are too strict, you're going to try to do whatever you're going to do without them knowing, whether it's on Snapchat or out in the real world. Like, that's something that technology hasn't changed. And that's something that I wish that I had the answer to, too. I don't think anyone has the answer to, like, how do we keep our kids doing what we want them to do? And part of it is they're supposed to do all that. Like, that is their job, to do all these things, try crazy things, and that not think about the consequences. It is arguably a little more dangerous now, but
yeah, I think it's much more dangerous, and I think that it's part of the culture. So we can't just take it away and say, sorry, you can't be on social media until you're 18. That's really robbing them of their, the social culture that's happening right now. So it's really just finding that balance and making sure that you stay in touch with your kids and keep guiding them, and also staying in touch with the other parents to make sure that we're all on the same page here and we're all helping each other.
And as you say, they're really, I mean, saying there's no safe place sounds like much scarier, and like it's not a scare tactic. It's just that kids need to know that, yes, like unlike us, when we would go do something in the privacy of our own room, with the door locked and no parents around and no cameras and no video cameras, it could just stay there. Whereas now, like if they have a second Instagram account, or if they're on Snapchat where things disappear, someone can screenshot it and it's no longer private.
It's no longer private. And they have the fake accounts where they open up a couple different accounts and it's not really them. It's, they're posing as somebody else and posting it there. And so it's a very slippery slope right now with social media.
So do you have any suggestions for keeping your kids' friends from posting things, or asking having your kids' friends take things down that they might have posted?
It's hard with Snapchat because it does disappear. It's very, very hard. That is the social network of choice for teenagers right now, especially in high school. And I'd say 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade is when it starts. So it is almost impossible to monitor the content that's going on Snapchat. I would say just, checking in with your kids and checking their profiles on Instagram. If they are on Facebook, which most teenagers aren't on Facebook until maybe their senior year. So you kind of have to be a little bit of a spy with them, and build trust and get to a point where you feel like, okay, they're doing okay, but watch for red flags.
So you also had a really interesting suggestion. You suggest teenagers should have a LinkedIn account. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I'm actually helping my daughter tonight set up hers. So LinkedIn just opened up the network to 13 and older. So colleges and universities are now using LinkedIn to look at somebody's, almost like a resume. What have they achieved in high school? What sports were they on? What clubs were they part of? Where did they volunteer? And then high school students are using LinkedIn to research universities. So, and another bonus with LinkedIn is that it's heavily weighted with Google search. So that's a way to really make sure that positive search results are going to come up first in Google if somebody Googled your child's name on, let's just say, doing a search for them. If it was a college admissions, or if it's somebody just kind of checking out their reputation, you can control your reputation by signing up with LinkedIn early, and that way that'll help you have positive search results. So there's multiple benefits for being part of LinkedIn, and it's also giving them kind of a glimpse at a professional network, which is completely different than Snapchat. And I'm not anti-Snapchat. I bought stock in Snapchat. I think Snapchat does have value. Do I think it has value for teenagers right now? I think no. I don't see that value with Snapchat. But LinkedIn is a way to really teach your kids about careers and what are they thinking of for college, and showing them what it looks like to actually, putting together a reputation, a resume for themselves, for preparing themselves for college.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for writing both of these pieces. They're both up online. Is lisabuyer.com the best place to find your work?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. Thanks. So lisabuyer.com, at Lisa Buyer on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you, Lisa.
Take care.
Take care.